and I was asked to give the Isotonic drink. And this is a drink that will guarantee a bowel movement within about an hour. We don't usually use it because not everyone can handle it. So they've got to try and drink this 2 litres in about half an hour. And it's 1/3 seawater, 1/3 boiling water and 1/3 spring water. So it comes out as warm and it's slightly salty. Yeah?
You mentioned before the other recipe as 1 cup of water, 1 teaspoon.
Okay, so to make seawater, it's 1 teaspoon of salt to 1 cup of water. That's seawater. That's to make seawater. So what we do in Australia, I know at Living Valley Springs, the retreat, they give all their guests this Isotonic drink, and they go to the beach and collect the seawater and just use seawater. So when you're collecting seawater, you have to go where, ideally away from a town, and the purest water will be found. So you've probably seen Australian beaches. Australia has the most beautiful beaches. It's fine white sand. So, and the coastline sort of will go like that, a bit rocky, then another beach. So the best place to collect the seawater is right in the middle. You come out a little bit where the waves are crashing, because the waves are constantly purifying the water. So and of course that's a very cheap drink to get the bowels moving. But it's very important that you have something. When I was in a retreat in Manchester recently, they have a dried aloe powder that they buy, and that gets the bowels moving. And so for aloe to do that, it must have some of that yellow that lines the leaf. But because when I was at Living Valley Springs, I did see that some people experienced quite a bit of discomfort. Some people just couldn't drink that much. And I also saw staff pressuring people to drink it. And you know, they've come to a retreat for a holiday and they don't want to sit down and drink that. But if someone's sick, like the man I told you about with Michael, he was ready to drink anything to just get this moving. So you also feel your way with your people. If we get someone come that want that drink, of course we'll make it up for them. But we find that the Colon tea, as we looked at yesterday, the buckthorn, licorice and cascara, we find that drunk of an evening, in the morning they will go a couple of times. So that works well. I think it's also very important when you have your health retreat to have a couple of enema kits, so that if you get someone who is in a lot of discomfort, you can give them an enema and they'll have relief, you know, within about half an hour. And I know in Australia they have books where, you know, things you can order, different equipments, and they usually will have a book that'll show you can order an enema kit. So then the question is, what herbs? What herbs should you have on hand? I went through some herbs when we looked at the gut, and I told you of the digestive tea mix that we have. And I also showed you the colon tea mix. And of course you adjust this depending on where you live and what herbs you are able to get. We have lemongrass growing, we have a lot of peppermint growing. I noticed you've got some very nice peppermint out there. And so if a guest wants a tea, we'll usually give them a fresh tea, which is fresh peppermint or fresh lemongrass or grated ginger. That's also very nice tea. So the juices that we serve are predominantly 80% carrot and 10% apple and 10% celery. Celery definitely is a crop that is very sprayed. So I think it's very important that the health retreat grow their own celery. Before I left Misty Mountain, we've had 3 beds of celery, but I made up another whole bed of celery because we were just going into winter. In summer, the celery goes to seed, and once the celery goes to seed, the base of the celery, little tiny celery plants start popping up. They're connected to like the mother plant, and you dig that up and just break them up, and that enabled me to start another whole bed of celery. Our celery looks like the celery. Have you seen Katya's celery out there? They're only little plants, aren't they? Yeah, that's what our celery looks like. It looks more like Italian parsley, but it's very dark green and it's very high in chlorophyll, being so dark green, very high in minerals. The celery that you buy in the shop has really been pumped full of chemicals to make it look the way it does. And in the shop, most people buy celery for the stalks. Well, we use probably mostly the leaves.
You don't only the leaves?
We do the stalk, but they're thin. They're not big and fat like the ones in the shops. We had a French chef working for us down at Mountain View. Our retreat was called Mountain View when we were in Melbourne, and he always used the leaves. In fact, he valued the leaves more than he valued the stalk. And it's the flavour, really. It's the flavour that you're getting. So that's our 8 a.m. juice. So our 10 a.m. juice is Granny Smith apple, they're the green apples, and ginger. This is a delicious juice, but if we have diabetics there, we have people conquering cancer, instead of giving them that because you don't want them to have so much apple, it's a bit too sweet, we just give them this again. So the 12 o'clock juice, or I think on the chart it's 11:30 or 11:45 juice. It's I think it's about 40% cucumber, and cucumber's very alkalizing and a wonderful cleanser, and 40% apple and 20% greens. So the greens can be stinging nettle, they can be a little bit of celery, they can be pumpkin tops, any edible green, and we also try and put a good handful of mint into that. So as you can imagine, that comes out a very dark green mix, and it's and the guests very much like it. So
you do it a day before, you do it on Sunday?
We do these 2 Sunday, and that allows our chef or our cook to come in a little later, and our cook comes in, say, at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they do the other juices. And then in the late afternoon, then they'll juice for the next 2 days. For the next day, the first 2 juices. So the 2 p.m. juice, is, I think it's about 70% carrot and 10% apple and 10% beetroot. %, celery. If you give too much beetroot, because when we were at Living Valley Springs, one of the students read about the wonders of beetroot, and he gave the guests straight beetroot juice. and some of them vomited straight back up, some of them got quite sick. See, what the beetroot does, it can stimulate the liver to clean, and it's too fast. So make the juice, and you might think, I'd like more beetroot in that. So you might eliminate the apple and do 20% beetroot. You can certainly play around with it. So the last juice of the day is the 4 p.m. juice, and the 4 p.m. juice is 50% carrot and 50% pineapple. And if pineapple's something that you can't get, or you can't get decent ones, and perhaps in Sweden you can't, you could do another one of any of those. So for our people who are here conquering cancer or conquering diabetes, we'll do the carrot, celery and apple juice again at 10, and the carrot, celery and apple juice again at 4 p.m. so they don't have that sweet. And then they're having their steam bath, as you can see, from 3:30. Ladies 3:30 to 4:30, and the men are 4:30 to 5:30, and then 6:30 broth is served, and that's a lot of vegetables. So I'll give you the recipe for broth. We do carrots, and you keep the skin on, onions. So for carrots it might be 4, onions it might be 2 if they're big, maybe 4 if they're little, and potato with the skin on. The only time we don't leave the skin on the onions if it looks a bit black or not nice. We only use it if it looks nice, it looks clean. Potatoes 2 if they're big, a few more if they're not so big. Celery. So with the celery you'd use about 1 cup. And stinging nettle. So with the stinging nettle, you do about 2 cups of that. And that has a simmer for 4 to 5 hours. And so after 4 to 5 hours, you strain that out, and then you add Celtic salt to taste, and that's the broth that the guests have. So I guess looking at, I suppose you do about 4 litres of water to that. And of course, depending on how many guests you've got, if you double it or halve it.
This is 1 portion for 1 person?
Oh no, that's for all your guests. They would have, because it's 4 litres. Again, depending on. So your average, each guest will have about 2 cups.
So this will be a liquid, sorry?
Pure liquid, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a broth, meaning like a very thin soup.
Okay.
Now on cooking days, what our cooks usually do is they throw they can throw the carrot tops in, they could throw the cauliflower leaves in, the stalk of the broccoli gets thrown in. So when the guests aren't eating, so Monday, Tuesday, that's the basic recipe. But when the cooks are in the kitchen, they always have a broth pot there, and they throw the bits and pieces, and they chop up an onion. If the skin looks good, well, that gets thrown in the broth pot. The more onion skins that go in, it goes a nice dark brown colour, because you probably know they use onion skins to dye things. Sometimes they use it to dye wool, a nice golden colour, golden brown colour.
You mean the crunchy part of the onion skin?
No. Skin.
The complete outside bit.
Skin.
So the broth is made fresh every evening? Or
Sometimes we have guests that want 4 cups each per night, and then we certainly would make a bit more. And then we have other guests that just have 1 cup or half a cup. and we might have a lot left over, so you certainly can do the next day. And on Friday they usually cook doubles, so because our cooks on Sabbath, our cooks come in for breakfast, they serve the breakfast, they get the dishes done, and then our cooks are free until Sunday morning breakfast. So what happens at lunchtime? Usually they make a lasagna and they assemble the lasagna and put it in the fridge. We always give our guests a dessert on Sabbath, and that might be a frozen cheesecake, so that's easy. That can be made Monday or Tuesday. And I used to always give the lecture on the mind in the morning, and when I'd finished I'd go down and put the lasagna in the oven, make the salad, steam some broccoli, and Michael and I would serve the lunch. That allows the rest of the staff to have most of their day off. So our exercise coordinator, Howard, he does the morning exercise with the guests, and then he and his family go to church, and they're back by say 3 o'clock, and then they light the steam bath and the guests have their steam bath. So Howard gets most of the day off. So that's what we try and do on Sabbath. Everyone has a portion off. And I come in at 8 and do the lecture, and then I go home after lunch is finished, and then I have the rest of the day off. So it's nice to work out shift with your staff so that you're not overworking them, and it enables them to be able to implement exercise. We had one cook, and she would come in early, she would serve the breakfast, and then she'd go and have her walk. And then she'd come back, and then she'd have breakfast, because we usually have someone helping the cook in the dishes.
How many are you, the staff?
I think we've got about 6.
6 persons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can handle like 10 or 6?
Yeah.
How many guests you can handle?
Well, we try not to have any more than 12. We try not to have any more than 12. But